Okay. Hi, Camilla. How are you?
Good. It's so nice to speak with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you on the show. Thank you for coming on. We're going to be talking about your book called Skating Late. You are an author, public speaker, and educator. How many books have you published at this point?
This is my very first book. I wrote it about 14 years ago, and I've said it aloud to hundreds of kids, but I really didn't have the confidence or the opportunity to put illustrations with it and put it out there to the world until this year. So it was just released in March, and I had a plan to do a really limited local pre-release and just focus on my own little community, but the book has made its way to every province and territory and several states and a couple of other countries across the globe. So it's finding its way out into the world, even after just a couple of months.
Okay, so you are a teacher?
Yeah, I've been doing mental health education and literacy work pretty much through my whole career for about 20 years. But before COVID, I worked at a private school with kids who had learning differences and ADHD. And I was a director of student support and taught social skills and social emotional learning. But then COVID hit, and then kidney disease happened shortly thereafter. So I had to leave the workforce for about three and a half years on disability. So this is kind of my grand reentrance.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the kidney disease. Are you on dialysis currently?
No, I had to have my kidney removed, unfortunately. So it's curative, which is good, but it was a bit of a long road to come back from that.
Oh, yeah. And I'm very familiar with that because my producer, John, who I mentioned, is a kidney dialysis patient. He's been doing dialysis for many years, and he had one transplant that lasted about 9 years. And then when that kidney died, he had to go back on. So we're real familiar with it. Well, I'm sorry to hear that,
Yeah,
but I'm
thank
happy
you.
that I'm happy that you were cured at least.
Yeah,
So
me too.
so the one kidney that you've got left is working just fine then, yeah?
Yeah, it's hanging on. So, and I do have siblings and cousins who are in the wings and have offered me use of their kidneys if I need it. So I have a backup plan in place, but I'm hoping that this one hangs on and stays healthy for as long as possible.
Yeah, I hope so too. Okay, so the book Skating Late is was it inspired by your teaching of the kids you were talking about?
I think it was inspired. It's a very, very Canadian story, and probably the most Canadian thing about it is that it features our Canadian weather, which is really, really unpredictable. They say, like in Nova Scotia, where I live, they say if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, and it's sure to change. And that is definitely the case. We're very familiar with wild weather here and get literally all forms of it. We just unfortunately had a bunch of flash flooding here in our community, but in the wintertime when you wake up for school, you really do not know what you're facing. And in this case, our little character wakes up to a very, very slippery day and has to skate to school. So Nova Scotia weather really inspired the story. And when I did a lot of work with preschoolers, and that was kind of one of the things that we talked about. Like when you wake up, look out the window, and so that informs what you're going to wear for the day and if there would be school for the day. And so the Nova Scotia weather definitely was a big inspiration for the story.
When I read the title and saw that you were from Nova Scotia, initially I thought it was going to be about hockey, but it's not really about hockey, is it?
No, it features all Canadian winter sports. It does have a hockey aspect. There's a really fun baloney slap shot that happens in the story, but it also has figure skating and like cross country Canadian treks. So, and I wanted it to appeal to every Canadian child, so not just the hockey player. Any kid who's ever strapped on a pair of skates or thought about it, I wanted them to be able to relate to this story.
What age group would you say that the book is geared towards?
It's for readers about 3 to 7 or 8, but I really wrote it for the person who's reading the book. So I wrote it with somebody like my dad in mind, who was the champion of reading and recitation. He loved rhyming stories like this, like really silly nonsense stories. And so I wrote it kind of with him in mind. I was thinking about an adult reader who really gets a kick out of fun language and sing-songy rhymes. So it's definitely appealing to the children, but I'm extra excited when I hear from parents and grandparents that they really enjoy reading it to their kids.
Also says that you're an engaging public speaker. What sort of speaking do you do?
I have a lot of stories, but what I really like to talk about are wellness and writing practices that have been, at certain points in my life, very life enriching. They've made my life better and happier and healthier. And at other points in my life, those practices have really been life saving. So they're practices like meditation and mindfulness, gratitude, caring for yourself and your body, being a friend to yourself and others. Those are the themes that really have been very impactful in my life, and that I was able to share with kids before COVID and kidney disease kind of derailed my career a little bit. But those were the things that I was really passionate about sharing with youth and families, was introducing these practices that have, at those times were really life enriching. And in that break that I had from the workforce, I consider them to be life-saving. They really kind of helped me focus on the positive and claw my way back into the workforce, rather than just waste away on disability, which was kind of what I really didn't want to do that. I take a lot of value from my work, so it was really important to me that I get back to the workforce as soon as possible. And those practices were a really big part of me being able to do that.
Were your speaking engagements for kids or for adults or for everybody?
I serve people of all ages and abilities. Like, I'm a human services, very passionate about human services. And so I've served people that literally all ages and abilities. I used to work in group homes with adults who had diverse needs, and with youth and families with various needs. So I really love to be able to serve people of all ages and abilities. My stuff lends itself, I guess, a little bit more to kids. That's where I get along really well with kids. I fancy myself pretty entertaining, and so that audience seems to be like my target audience, or the ones who most enjoy my speeches and talks.
Who do you think is more receptive to your speaking, adults or kids?
I think that adults are really hungry for this, and they know that they're wanting to serve their children, and they know that there's a huge need. Like, even I started this work before COVID, and so we didn't really know what we were preparing kids for. We knew that resilience was really important, but since COVID, those themes have become even more prevalent. Like, I'm seeing kids who were really on a trajectory to be healthy and well, and they had a lot of supports in place, and those things kind of derailed during COVID. And so I think parents, schools, there's a recognition among adults that there's a huge need for programming and for ideas around whole self wellness for kids. So it seems to be the parents who are seeking it out a little bit more, but the kids are incredibly receptive to it. There's a lot of things that I say it's teaching, but kids really know this stuff, and they just kind of need to have a space in order to practice it. So it's harder for me to convince adults that creativity is a really important thing that they should be practicing every day. Kids, they're a little bit more tuned into that. They understand that being creative is a big important part of happiness and health. And so just giving them opportunities to do that is really great. But as long as you keep things really fun for kids, and they don't know that I don't advertise what I do as a mental health service or tier 2 mental health practices. As far as the kids who come to my programs and talks, as far as they're concerned, it's just for fun, and it's just fun practices that make you healthier and happier. So once we get them there, then they're laughing and having a great time. They just sometimes it's a little bit of a hump to get them in the door, and so I'm really grateful for parents and teachers for helping sell my services. But once they get there, the kids have a blast.
So your book's Skating Late. What is the message?
It's kind of funny. My illustrator, when she got the book, she was like, "This is so refreshing. It is not jam-packed with lessons." And it's true. Like the book itself, it's you wouldn't consider it to be a mental health book or jam-packed with lessons of resilience and determination, but there are those themes peppered throughout the book. And as I said to my illustrator, I hook them with the fun, and then I give them the messages once I get to go in and have a class visit or developing a creative curriculum to accompany the book, so I can really dig into some lessons more deeply in the curriculum. The book itself is mostly just fun, but there's positive affirmations peppered throughout. There's problem solving, lots of determination by our confident creative character as they skate off to school. So it's not so on the nose, but there's a lot of things there that we can kind of dig into and create some great creative curriculum around.
Is there one particular issue that you think kids are dealing with now after COVID? Do you see anything that's standing out?
I think that the big thing, I kind of touched on it a little bit before, but there is a lot of, like, I'm really passionate about tier 2 mental health services. So those are the things that prevent mental illness and promote mental health. And so there were things in place before COVID that were really beneficial, and kids who didn't have a bunch of risk factors, you could pretty much tell that if they were involved in the right organizations and activities, that they were on a trajectory to be pretty healthy and happy as they moved through their adolescence and into those ages when they're more likely to stumble into mental health problems. So like through adolescence into their 20s. I and a lot of other educators and parents realized that a lot of kids who were on that really healthy trajectory, COVID kind of knocked them off of it. It just there were kids who were really involved in sport, and that was shut down for a couple of years. Kids who got a lot from their school, and that was kind of, those supports were taken from them. So that's kind of what I'm seeing is kids who they've gotten out of the habit of some of those really great wellness practices that were just a normal part of life pre-pandemic. And so reintroducing kids to a lot of those supports, and the world kind of became different. A lot happened on their devices. And so getting kids out to in-person things where socialization is back on the table, like that was, I think that was really challenging. Like, kids forgot how to socialize, forgot how to play. Like the first day that my son and his friend got back together after COVID, they just kind of they stood there and looked at each other, and it was as if they had completely forgotten how to play. So I think it's that kind of thing where we're just getting back to quote unquote normal, and jumping back into those services and supports that are really helpful.
Well, Camilla, I think on that we're going to have to wind it down. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The book is called Skating Late. You said it is out, right?
That's right. You can find it on my website, sunnysideself.ca.
Okay, give that out again, please.
Sunnysideself.ca.
Sunnysideself.ca. Okay, we'll put that up on the screen. And best of luck. I hope the book does well.
Thanks very much. It was really nice to speak with you.